Hello, everyone. I thought I would talk to you about some of the themes that are in my book, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy. Of course, I've talked about some of them before, but there are many themes that there isn't just one. And I'm probably even going to leave some themes out. But I thought I would try to talk to you about some of the main ones, at least. And so, one of the main themes when it comes to the main characters is the theme of forbidden love. The idea that sometimes there can be a conflict between our moral beliefs and the desires of our heart. Sometimes we may know something to be wrong or to be morally complicated, but we still find ourselves drawn in that direction because of how we feel. There's a conflict, so to speak, between the head and the heart, and that is the character of Catherine encapsulates that she is a very devout, religious woman. She is very conservative in her beliefs overall, but at the same time, but she's in a loveless marriage. She married the character of Frederick Harris when she was just a teenager, mainly to avoid starving. And so there really isn't any love in the relationship. And in fact, Frederick can be quite abusive at times, verbally and physically. I mean, he doesn't beat Catherine, to death, but sometimes if he becomes too angry, he will slap her. And so it's an abusive marriage, and some people may say that she's justified in leaving the marriage because it is such an abusive relationship. And so in that regard, she finds herself drawn to Edward Compton, who is an employee of Frederick Harris. Frederick Harris owns a factory in the town of Harrisville, and he's the wealthiest man in the town because Edward is a free spirit like her. He is an artist. He's someone who she can relate to because he has desires that are not fully material, and she finds that very attractive and very alluring. And Edward finds her alluring because she is someone who has such passions and ideals that cannot be found anywhere else in the town, or at the very least, are very hard to find. So Catherine has an ethereal presence that he's drawn to, even though he also has his own personal and moral beliefs. I mean, he's not quite as devout as Catherine, but even he has a connection to God, so to speak, through nature, through his art. So even he feels conflicted about whether he should get involved with her, even though in the story he presses it more than she does. He's primarily the one doing the seducing. And so this conflict is very interesting. It's interesting to explore the conflict between the head and the heart, because human beings are very complicated, and their values don't always line up perfectly in a harmonious way. And so I find that theme very interesting, the theme of forbidden love. I find actually forbidden love more interesting than when you have, let's say, a couple that they're both a similar age, they're both single. To me, they're both, of the same race or whatever. Well, Catherine and Edward are of the same race, but you know what I mean. There's nothing and they're also the same. Well, no, Catherine is British, Edward is American, but you know what I mean. There's nothing that they are of different classes, though, so to speak. But there's nothing different about the characters. That they're from the same. They're from the same background, they're from the same class, they're from the same age, and to me, I don't really find relationships like that interesting. To me, the most interesting kind of relationships are when there's a conflict, or a reason for why the characters cannot be together, or why it would be taboo somewhat for them to be together, whether it's because they're on different sides of a conflict. Well, or it could be because there's an age difference, or one person has perhaps taken a vow of chastity, something, or their families hate each other. There's something that is keeping them apart. So that's one theme. Another theme, though, is another theme has to do that there are two themes, and seemingly contradictory themes, but they're both very important. And that is, there's the theme of dogmatism. I'll just try to sum this up very briefly. You have in the story a revolution that is going on where basically the workers are trying to unite and take over the town from the capitalists, and the leaders of this revolution is Bertrand Shaw, who is kind of an intellectual philosopher, Desmond Archer, who is a member of the working class. He has his own motivations. I won't touch on him in this. And then you have Reverend Hartstone, who is a preacher. But it's interesting to observe the conflict, the contrast between Hartstone and Bertrand Shaw, because they both represent extremes. On one hand, you have Reverend Hartstone, who is fanatical. He is someone who thinks that God is always on his side, and if you're not on his side, that means that you must be against God. So he essentially uses religion in order to get what he wants, and sometimes he may not always be. Sometimes he may be acting in conflict to what the scriptures say or what Jesus says. He's acting in his own interest, but he'll do evil things, though, in the name of righteousness, in the name of God, because he knows that is the best way to influence people. And so he's a hypocrite in that regard, but a very committed and fanatical one. But at the same time, you have the character of Bertrand Shaw, who believes that belief in God should cease, that it's just a superstition. And they work together because their goals align, but they're very different people. And he believes that if people were to just get rid of religion and were to follow logic and reason, then everything would work out. But that also is not true, because people aren't logical and they aren't reasonable. And people, including Shaw, often make assumptions about humans that cannot be justified purely through empirical means, like the idea that the human being has objective and intrinsic human value. You cannot prove that logically. In fact, even logic and empiricism itself cannot be proven through pure logic, because if you say, for example, that we should only believe things that can be empirically proven, that itself is not an empirically verifiable statement. So it's self-defeating. And so when one removes God completely from society, the world ceases to make sense, which is something that becomes relevant. I won't give it away. That becomes relevant towards towards the end of the story. And so you have all these themes. You have warnings against fanaticism, but at the same time you also have religious fanaticism. But at the same time you also have warnings against getting rid of belief in God and Christianity altogether. And so these are just some of the major themes in the Ecstasy and the Ignominy, and they're very nuanced themes. And to me, I don't really give clear answers, because art is not about giving. I mean, I have my own perspective on things, but art is not about giving clear answers. It's about starting a conversation, even if people come to different conclusions than I do. So those are just some of the major themes of the Ecstasy and the Ignominy. And I hope you got something out of this video today. And if you read the book, you'll keep some of these themes in mind while analyzing the text.